Hello again. The newspapers report today that the coronation chair is being repaired and spruced up for the coronation of King Charles, which will take place in the early summer. Oddly enough, nobody seemed at all keen to mention what caused the chair to be in such a terrible state in the first place. This is because it would entail criticising the suffragettes and talking about their terrorism, of course. By the summer of 1914, shortly before the start of the First World War, the British government had had enough of the bombings and arsons being carried out by Emmeline Pankhurst and her suffragettes. Bombs had exploded all over the country, places like Roslin Chapel in Scotland, bombs planted at St Paul's Cathedral, churches had been burned down. The Home Secretary was ready to announce a new raft of measures against the terrorism. At 5:30 on the afternoon of June the 11th, the Home Secretary rose in the House of Commons to outline the government's new strategy for dealing with the suffragette attacks. He began by explaining that although the number of incidents overall was declining, those that did take place were increasingly serious. McKenna went on to talk of the sinister figures with money bags who selected dupes and paid them £1 or £2 a week to carry out attacks and go on hunger strikes. The authorities now had enough evidence to bring a test case of civil action for damage to property and also criminal prosecutions for inciting terrorism. There now occurred one of those strange and ironic coincidences that would not be out of place in a play or film. The Home Secretary was speaking in calm, measured tones about the sensible policies of the Asquith administration and how these were sure to triumph in the long run. He explained that the government was taking patient and determined action, and the words were no sooner out of his mouth than there came the sound of an explosion. Another bomb had gone off, this time near to the Houses of Parliament. A number of MPs jumped to their feet and hurried from the chamber to investigate. In nearby Westminster Abbey, tourists were heading towards the exits. The Abbey was due to close at 6, and it was now 1:45. There was what witnesses described as a terrific explosion, and then a column of smoke and dust rose from the chapel where the coronation chair was kept, and slowly spread through the rest of the Abbey. The chair on which monarchs have sat during their coronation since 1300 was damaged by the bomb, which was powerful enough to have chipped the stonework of the ceiling high overhead. The explosion was heard a long way down Victoria Street and even, as we've seen, in the Houses of Parliament. The police sealed off Westminster Abbey after the bomb attack and arrested 2 women. They proved to be just harmless Danish tourists and they were soon released. Apart from some superficial marks on the walls and ceiling of the chapel in which the coronation chair was kept and a few bits of broken stone carving, there didn't appear to be too many serious consequences in the aftermath of the explosion. This was regarded as being extremely fortunate because the bomb had been packed with pieces of iron, obviously with the intention of causing as much damage as possible. It was to be almost 40 years before a discovery was made that a very ancient relic had been irreparably harmed. At Christmas 1950, 4 Scots nationalists kidnapped the Stone of Scone, which had been kept beneath the coronation chair for over 600 years and which had originally been brought to London after being captured from the Scots. The 4 students who had hidden themselves in the Abbey overnight pulled the sandstone block from under the coronation chair where it rested. To their amazement, they found it had been broken in half at some time in the past. It was a result of the bomb which had exploded nearby almost 40 years earlier. It's curious that no mention of any of this has been made while the coronation chair is in the news, but I suppose that this would mean implicitly criticising one of the great sacred cows of British history, and so it felt better to remain silent. Lord forbid that we should criticise the Pankhursts.